factor which I wanted to tell you from my side. As I told you, whenever somebody is different, they are automatically looked upon as aliens. So we can see, for example, our citizens from the northeast states. If anybody from Manipur or that thing comes over here, they are immediately looked upon as aliens. And we are very suspicious, we don't include them. Of late, you must have been seeing the amount of hatred against Negroes who are here, and a lot of them coming here to study, and the blacks, and they are facing that. So, whenever you are different from the majority, you are always, kept a distance apart. So, accept that. Don't fight that. Don't say that, why should somebody treat me differently just because I am not whatever it is. Accept it. So how do you then cope with it? You find what we say, that birds of a feather flock together, that sort of thing. So you find like-minded people who have similar situations, similar interests, or something of that sort. So if you are a person from Manipur and you speak Manipuri language, in the entire locality you may not get a single person who speaks. So what do? You go hunting. And even if somebody is in Jayanagar who speaks Manipuri, I make friends with that person, and then if I can't go there also, I can talk to him on the phone and get that thing that, okay, I can converse in my mother tongue to somebody right here in this city. That is where the significance of such a group or whatever comes around. Whenever you find that you can work, and here again it works two ways. One is on a one-to-one basis. So I identify one person who is in a similar boat or in a similar situation, and I link up with that person. The other is to do it as a group, because then it starts binding. Because one person may or may not have the same attitudes and behavior and thinking as you have. So it becomes difficult if you are relying only on a one-to-one basis. But when there is a group, if A is not available, B is busy, C is not interested in me, I can find D and say, okay, we can share something and we can understand each other and things of that sort. I wanted to share with you about, you must have heard of this organization called AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. It is Alcoholics Anonymous, AA. This is the most successful self-help group in the whole world. They exist in about 130 countries. It started off in the year 1937. It was very interesting. There was a gentleman who used to every evening go from office straight to the bar, get drunk, and then he would quarrel with his wife, he would have all sorts of problems. He wanted to get out of that drinking habit, but he was just not being able. He had got so badly addicted that the moment the evening comes, even if he forces himself to go home, half an hour later he would come out and again go to the bar. He had a friend who was a doctor. So he went to him and said that you are a doctor, can you not cure me? Can you not do something so that I don't have this craving for alcohol? Interestingly, the doctor said, if I had a cure, I would have cured myself. I am also an alcoholic. And I am very upset about it, and I don't know what to do. So what I can do is, I finish my work, you finish your work, come to this park which is in the middle of our this thing. We'll sit here and prevent each other from going to the bar. So beyond a certain point, the bars will start closing, you'll start getting hungry, you'll want to go home and have dinner. So that crucial time will pass off, and then we'll both go home. That's how Alcoholics Anonymous started off. And today, as I said, it is in 135 countries. I've had the privilege. There's only one person in AA who is called the A-class trustee, who is a non-alcoholic, because they need a name and a face. Alcoholics are anonymous, as we say, so they don't come out in the open and they don't declare for that sort of thing. So they need one person. So I had the privilege of being their A-class trustee, and I worked very close with them. To become a member of AA, all you have to do is to walk in. If this is a AA meeting going on, I have to walk in and introduce myself only by my first name, saying, my name is Ali and I am an alcoholic. I've admitted that I'm an alcoholic. That's all I have to do. If I say, I'm a social drinker, I can give up whenever I want. Once in a while I drink out. You first admit that you are an alcoholic, then you become a member. Beyond that, you don't want to give any details, you can remain anonymous. You can even give a pseudonym. Instead of saying Ali, I will say, my name is Vijay. Okay, we'll call you Vijay. No issues. That sort of thing. And when they meet, what happens is that everybody talks about how alcohol has spoiled their life. So one person says that my name is Ali, I'm an alcoholic, and I'm getting very upset because my wife is threatening to leave me and go away. I'm having financial problems and this and that. But today I've not had a drink. Instead of going and having a drink, I've come here for this meeting, so I'm hoping that today I will not have a drink. The next person sitting says, my name is Vijay and I'm an alcoholic and I've not had a drink today. So I turn to him and say, where do you normally go for drink? He said, the last time I had alcohol was in the year 2004. 13 years you've not had a drink. Yes, I've not had a drink. Then you said that today I've not had a drink. Yes, I live one day at a time. Because I don't know whether tomorrow I will end up in a bar. So I'm still coming here because I want to reassure to myself. So when I hear stories from people, it gets reassured to me that I need to keep away from and then the best part of it, which I wanted to suggest to you people, is they have what is known as a 12-step process for rehabilitation and getting back to normal life. That 12th step is supposed to be the most critical, which says, I will reach out to a brother alcoholic and give all my support to that person in whatever way I can. There are AA members who go to another alcoholic's office and stand outside waiting for him to come out. When he comes out, they say, don't go to the bar, come with me, we'll go and sit in coffee day or we'll do something else. That is what keeps the thing going. So they don't come there expecting, when I go there, I will get some benefits. They will help me or something. I am coming here to help the others, and that can keep the thing going. I have also I've been part of and I have helped to promote a number of self-help groups. Those which fizzled off were because a person comes there and says, okay, every week or every month you are having a meeting. I have attended 6 meetings, how have I benefited from that? So what's the point? Why should I waste my time? If you come with that attitude, nothing will happen. But if I say, I have been through misery, so I know I can empathize with this person or this person or this person, I have felt that pain. The other people who have not gone through a similar experience, they can't feel the pain that I can feel. So I am here, I can't help her in any way. She lives in the other end of the city, she's got her own issues, she's got her family, children, this, that. I have nothing to do with her. But I am sitting here in this meeting to show my solidarity that you are not alone. So I will come here, I will sit. I may not even open my mouth, I will allow everybody to talk and I will go away. So this is my contribution to people whom I empathize with, not sympathize. Remember the critical difference. There will be a lot of people who sympathize with you. As she rightly said, we don't want pity from the people. Oh, your father died, is it, and all that. Obviously the child is going to be very upset, she doesn't want. But empathy is something that we need. And empathy can be given only by a like-minded group like this, who says that yes, I understand what you are doing. Even if your circumstances are totally different from mine, I can still say that I am one person who can empathize with